Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang, sheltering in place in San Francisco. Markets ending the day up. The Dow, S&P, and the Nasdaq all closing higher today. This as daily deaths in the United States from the coronavirus still close to 2,000 people dying per day. New York reporting another 800 or so casualties today. We're going to take you to the White House press conference that's scheduled to start later this hour. But first, I want to talk about the video conferencing service that has taken the world by storm, and that is Zoom over the last several weeks. This is a service that has been a lifeline, keeping families and businesses together, but has also been dogged by security issues, privacy issues, Zoom bombing, as it's called, where Zoom raiders, as they're being called, hijack meetings and harass some of the participants. Moments ago, I spoke with Zoom CEO Eric Yuan about what he's doing to combat all of this. Let's take a listen to that conversation.
Zoom was built for serving the enterprise business customer before this crisis. And, we learned, right, for the first time consumers, and they do not have an IT team. We should do more. Not only do we offer the service, but also give them a very strict security and controls, like make the password or waiting room default. We already took actions over the past several weeks.
I just want to get a sense of what it's like on the inside of a company when you suddenly go from 10 million to 200 million users in a matter of weeks. Talk to us about what that's like. It's not just business customers, but weddings and funerals and schools and families, just as of last night, celebrating Passover.
It's really, really hard. We are working extremely hard, right, for almost several months now. So every day look at the capacity, traffic, and how to, add more capacity and make sure that the service up. And work so hard. It's really, really challenging, not easy. And also not to mention the cost, and all our employees working so hard to really want to help the world. And also recently we have had to deal with all those the privacy, the PR, issues, and life is really hard. It's really not that easy.
You've been banned by school districts, including the New York City Department of Education, the governments of Taiwan and Germany for official use, Google as well. Of course, they have a competing product. Tesla, SpaceX. How many customers are you actually losing as a result of some of these security issues?
Probably you already mentioned most of them already. And by the way, we are still in the process to work together with New York, City, the Department of Education. And, so we have so many public schools, they all work together with us. Essentially, they would like to manage, more like they have IT team, manage and a big master account. And we are still in the process. And also, for sure, there's some news headlines, I think is some information seriously, a little bit misleading. And, some, like Taiwan, or they took actions. And I'm pretty sure, and in the future, after the re-understand the true facts, I think that they are going to make the change. So we are an American, business company. We do all we can to focus on business communication, security, and safety is very important for us. I think, after they understand the true facts, I think that they will change the decision.
So what are the true facts?
The true facts, first of all, Zoom is secure, Zoom is safe, right? Regarding those Zoom bombing, right? We already took actions, fixed all the problems, right? And also education and all the security vulnerabilities were already fixed. And also, for the very limited the time, there's some meeting traffic because we have a global distributed meeting architecture, right? For within a limited time, some meetings random, very random, right? And routed to Zoom China data center. However, this is very minor and also random. And plus is Zoom China data center. Plus, after meeting is over, the encryption key also is over. And plus, we know which customer, which account, which meeting, which attendee, had that problem. We have all those information, right? That's why a lot of misleading information. I just do not think that's fair to us. So anyway, so we are working on that.
There are various attorneys general examining the service in different states. You've got warnings about Zoom from the FBI. You've been sued by a shareholder for allegedly concealing the lack of encryption. And now just today, Senator Elizabeth Warren sent you a letter. She's concerned about kids. What's your response to all of this?
So first of all, that's great news. FBI involved. We share the same goal, right? We want everyone can run in class, everything, without any problem. I'm very excited to know FBI involved. Thank you for FBI. So, regarding the encryption, we do encrypt our, content, the same as any other competitors as well. And we use the AES and encryption. And however, just from our, because internal process, right? Since last August, we already changed our meeting calendar, removed end-to-end encryption to encrypted with AES. And however, because the internal process, we're still a startup growing company, and some marketing materials, technical document mentioned end-to-end encryption. I think that's really not right. We already fixed that problem. It's more like a kind of inconsistency, right? But the product already changed that. So it's from day one, the product, it's encrypted.
Have any formal investigations been launched that you know of?
No, I do not know.
Okay, now let's talk about encryption, because you have done a product freeze across the company, focusing all of your engineering resources on security and privacy for the foreseeable future. What is the timeline for true end-to-end encryption that meets the end-to-end standard?
So I'm in this web conferencing, video conferencing for more than 20 years, right? I came from WebEx, right? You look at WebEx today, by default, same AES, 128 or AES 256. Microsoft also same thing. For the conferencing, video conferencing, if you support a true end-to-end encryption, I do not think they're not like a FaceTime or WhatsApp, right? And here is, say for this meeting, you might use a phone call to dial in. You cannot support that. I think the way for us is to support AES 256 and ECB. We're going to upgrade to the AES 256 ECM. We also GCM. We're also going to let the customer, manage the key as well. I think that's the product roadmap. I do not think anyone, at this moment, offer the true end-to-end encryption. I mean, any conferencing, Microsoft or Google or Cisco. I do not think that none of them, they offer the true end-to-end encryption as a default. Really?
So do you think your product is safer than Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, WebEx?
No, I do not think it's safer. At least that's industry standard. We use the AES and 256, the ECB, and we are going to upgrade to AES 256 GCM. That's the AES in 256, that industry standard.
Now, you recently hired Alex Stamos, the former chief security officer at Facebook, and I'm curious, he's working for you as an advisor. What is he telling you?
Yeah, so, not only do we work on this, a lot of, the CISOs, they all, work together with us, right? And also because they like our product, they know that Zoom is a trustable company, and they all want to offer the help. And Alex is also one of them, and he's going to spend a little bit more time working together with us and review the process, because, before this crisis, we are, growing startup company, right? Suddenly, become, they kind of, so many users, right? Essentially, this kind of work, should have been done maybe within 2 to 3 years. We have to accelerate that, right? That's why we needed to invest more. And we never thought about this, right? A lot of the process, look at the security or privacy, internal process, you got to improve, right? But suddenly you have to improve almost over the night. This is the problem today.
Have you learned anything from the privacy missteps of like a Facebook or other tech companies that have been fighting this now over several years in the public eye?
I think, when we have consumers and the privacy is extremely important. The number one thing, we got to change our company culture. When it comes to any conflict between privacy, security, and ease of use, usability, privacy first. Security first. That's the number one thing we need to make change. That's the biggest change. We want to transform our business to be the privacy, security first company. I'll give you one example. We have a very good feature for enterprise customers in the training cases. When I share the screen and we view the screen, you might multitask, right? And I'm going to get an indicator. It's good for training case, but when it comes to consumer use case, this is a privacy problem. So we removed that feature forever.
So, I want to talk a little bit about schools. I know you have children. Your children are using Zoom and they're, school from home now. And Have you had any learnings there, seeing the product through a child's eyes, things that you can make better?
Yeah, first time my daughter used the product for her first online class, I asked her, hey, does your teacher enable the waiting room or not? She told me that yes, and then I feel very comfortable. I think, yeah, they are using Zoom and Notice every day. So, and the first time, right, for our family, we have several Zoom sessions at the same time. So hopefully our Wi-Fi should be okay.
So let's talk about schools and how you are evolving the product to work for schools. A lot of schools using it for free. Do you think you can convert some of these schools to paid users, and how do you ensure them that it's safe and that they all know how to use it safely?
Yeah, seriously, our focus really focuses on to help those schools and keep running and using Zoom and safely. We made a lot of changes like enable password, waiting room, disable the attendee sharing, and we really do not think about monetizing it at all. This is the time for us, to show our corporate social responsibility, right? Any company to leverage this crisis for marketing and sales, this is horrible, right? That's why even, we are facing all kinds of, the issues. I told our team, to myself every morning, in 20 or 30 years, when we look back, I want everybody to remember this. Zoom is doing the right thing to help Americans, to help the rest of the world, to keep the economy ongoing, right? Regardless of all those, the negative things, we just need to move forward. That's our principle.
Zoom CEO Eric Yuan there, and you can catch more of our conversation at Bloomberg.com. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Intel teaming up with Medtronic to add new technology to their ventilators to add remote monitoring. This would reduce exposure by healthcare workers to patients with COVID-19. We're going to be speaking with Intel CEO Bob Swan next. Also, we're getting new numbers from tech companies laying off employees through this crisis. Yelp now laying off 1,000 workers, also furloughing another 1,100. Meantime, the events ticketing company Eventbrite laying off 45% of its workforce, 45% of its workforce. We're going to continue to cover these headlines as they roll in. We'll be back after this quick break. This is Bloomberg. Intel announced this week a $50 million pledge to coronavirus response technology. This in addition to $10 million in donations to support local communities. Joining me on the phone right now is Intel CEO Bob Swan. Bob, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start on this ventilator announcement as well. You are teaming up with Medtronic to add remote monitoring technology, which would enable doctors to adjust the ventilator from outside the room and away from dangerous exposure to some of these patients. Talk to us a little bit about this technology and how quickly it's being used in 2 hospitals, as I believe at this moment, how quickly it can be scaled up.
Yeah, good afternoon, Emily, and thanks for having me. First I would just start with the pledge we made the other day, which in essence is to leverage technologies that we develop at Intel and make them rapidly accessible in a variety of different ways to help combat this pandemic that we're all collectively wrestling with. That's kind of what we set out to do, and we play such an important role in the digital infrastructure where our technologies in essence go inside everything that touches consumers' everyday lives, whether it's their PC or their phone or their hospital or their home or their car. Our technologies touch virtually everything. So as a result, with those capabilities comes a real sense of responsibility. So that was the impetus, if you will, that created this $50 million fund or commitment. The Medtronic is an example of one of the many things that we've embarked upon, and simply it was, in order to get access to ventilators, number one, and number two, to reduce exposure for healthcare providers, how do we enable the ventilator that Medtronic develops to have remote monitoring capability to reduce exposure? So we just announced, we came up with the idea with the Medtronic team just a week or so ago. We announced it Today, its capability is already on trial in 2 hospitals, and our ambitions are to dramatically ramp it up to give that remote diagnostic capability to increase capacity in the healthcare system and reduce exposure for healthcare providers. So it's an example of the many things that we're trying to do to combat this disease.
Now, Intel, I know parts of your business have been deemed an essential business, and you've said you're meeting 90% of orders. Of course, there's been a huge demand with folks working from home for new devices, cloud technology. Are you still keeping pace with that meeting of 90% of orders, and do you expect to be able to do that as this goes on for many more months?
Yeah, so we've had 90% of our global capacity has been up and running kind of throughout the course of the first quarter, not just the capacity, but also the on-time delivery that our customers and our customers' customers expect from us. So our global footprint has really, despite the inherent challenges, as an essential service provider, i.e. the things that we do are critical in general for the digital economy to operate, but specifically in these particular times, the needs for schooling at home, a computer at home, and or the need to access the internet, all these things in this digital world require our technology. So it has been extremely important for our teams around the globe as an essential service to meet the needs of our customers and to meet the needs of their customers. And, to the credit of the 110,000 Intel employees around the world that I'm extremely proud of, we've been able to continue to deliver for our customers while keeping our employees safe.
Now, we're hearing that there's been a surge in laptop demand, and I wonder, is that true? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, it is. I mean, our expectation coming into the year is relative to the first quarter of 2019, we expected demand to be relatively strong. And we saw that demand pick up during the course of the quarter, and it kind of followed almost the rate of progression of COVID-19 around the world, where things were slow initially, but they picked up in Europe, and then they gradually picked up here in the U.S. And it's somewhat logical and intuitive. When our lives are disrupted and we need to do more and more things from our home, we need to ensure that we have the technology at our disposal so things can go on as normal as possible. So what that has meant is demand for more and more devices, including PCs, to be available for parents to continue to conduct their work, and increasingly for kids to continue their education in so many ways. So we've seen demand kind of relatively strong during the course of the first quarter.
Other companies have indicated that cloud service providers have been ordering heavily to meet increased demand for online services. Is that something that you're seeing as well?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think we're a very diverse business, and I think you highlighted two of the particular stronger areas: the need for PCs to work from home and to be educated from home, and also the needs to be connected. And the needs to be connected, including your prior guest, those capabilities are powered by Intel's technology. So as the demand to be connected goes up, all else equal, the demand of the hyperscalers to need Intel's technologies to power their capabilities goes up with that.
Intel is part of this huge global supply chain, and I'm wondering if you can give us some color on what you're seeing. How badly was the supply chain hurt during the China part of the crisis, and what are you preparing for in terms of supply chain disruption as the outbreak continues to spread in Europe, in the U.S., possibly India, and possibly there could be a resurgence in Asia as well?
Well, I think it's. I'll give you some general observations, but I think a little more specifically for us. Yes, in fact, we have a very large global supply chain, as do the customers that we serve. So back in January, in some ways, when supply chains were disrupted because access to some components coming out of China in particular was somewhat constrained, we weren't as affected as a company because, as I indicated earlier, our outlook for the first quarter when we provided our guidance back in January is relatively strong. So in so many ways, our employees were working through the Chinese holidays. And as a result, they didn't leave to go back home. So they worked right through the holidays. So we were able to keep capacity up and running essentially throughout the challenges as they kind of went around the globe. The challenge since then has been to work extremely proactively with governments, states and governments, to ensure that the definition of essential services is well understood so we could keep our operations going, but also to be extremely cautious in ensuring that our number one goal through this from the beginning is the safety and the well-being of our employees. So rapidly deploying the best practices, if you will, on social distancing, constant cleaning, limit the number of essential people required to be at the office. So when we're building these products and keeping the global supply chain going, it is first and foremost ensuring that we're looking out for the safety of our employees. And our expectation is that's going to continue for a while, and our priorities will really remain the same: employee welfare, delivering for our customers, and ensuring we're leveraging our technologies to give back to the communities that we operate in so that we can get through this pandemic.
The markets have been extremely volatile. We're in the midst of a recession. I just talked about Yelp laying off 1,000 people, Eventbrite cutting 45% of this workforce. Nobody knows exactly how long this is going to last, how long we're going to be dealing with this, but you must have some sort of operating assumption. What do you believe the economy looks like coming out of this, and how hard does this hit the tech economy as well?
Yeah, it's very hard to say. I think right now, as I indicated, we have a very large and diverse set of technologies and capabilities, and in some cases, demand is softer. In other cases, demand is much stronger. So I think for us right now, it's really focused on keeping the global supply chain going and meeting the demand that we're feeling from our customers, but also as we do that, to be able to step back and get a sense as to, what is the second half, what is the second quarter, what does the second half look like for a diverse company like ours? Will the positive signs offset the more challenging signs? And until it gets clear, deliver for our customers while also do some contingency planning as we get more clear signals about what the second quarter and the second half outlooks will really be like for us.
So just quickly, some CEOs are telling us they're prepared for their employees to work from home for 6 months. I mean, do you think it could be another 6 months quickly?
Yeah, I think we have to plan for all sorts of a range of scenarios, and whether it's 6 weeks or 6 months. I think the implications are the demand for essential services as our normal way of doing things are disrupted. The need for our technologies will grow and grow, and therefore, whether it's 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months, it's critical for us that we're there for our customers, for our employees, and for our communities.
All right. Intel CEO Bob Swan. Bob, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Thanks so much for stopping by. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the virtual neighborhood, how neighbors are keeping neighbors protected through this crisis. We're going to talk to the CEO of Nextdoor, Sarah Frier, coming up. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. The rise of the virtual neighborhood. Neighbors across the country are turning to Nextdoor in the middle of this crisis to communicate, to barter, to run errands for each other. In my own neighborhood, we organized a neighborhood clap for the healthcare workers on Nextdoor. There are Easter scavenger hunts being planned on Nextdoor right now. But there's also a dark side to some of these communities. We spoke about that and more with Nextdoor CEO Sarah Fryer and the CEO of one of the businesses that can be found on Nextdoor, Helen Russell of Equators Coffee. Take a listen to that conversation.
We saw at the beginning of the crisis, people just asking for information. It's been really important that we have the most accurate real-time information from public agencies, like, for example, Governor Newsom here in California, Governor Cuomo in New York. Beyond that, then we started to see people asking for help or giving help. In fact, I would say initially, wave was, I want to help you, what do you need? And it took a little while for, I think, people to be willing to put their hand up on the other side. But we very definitively see people running grocery errands for the elderly or getting a prescription for someone that may be sick. Then we started to get even more specific. So things like help me homeschool my kids and join a group around that, or I have elderly parents at a distance, how will I deal with that? And I think now we're segueing into help us help local businesses. And I know we're going to talk to Helen in a moment, but very definitively the conversation has shifted gears into I love my local business. What can we do in the hour of need?
So, before we get to that, user engagement, I know, has soared. You said upwards of 80%. Talk to us a little bit about how much more engagement you're seeing and where those users are coming from.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So we've seen daily active users up 80% on a month-over-month basis. And we're actually seeing a lot of net new people come to the platform as well. As you know, Nextdoor is in 11 countries. So we've seen it across the board from Italy to Spain, France, the UK, Australia, Canada, the US, right? Every country's gone through its own wave. And as you know, Nextdoor is in every community. So frankly, it's rural communities, it's urban, it's suburban. It really hasn't mattered. They have all come to the platform right now because they see this need and this power of proximity. We also can look at it by things like other demographic information. And again, we see no real difference. When people are in need in a crisis, it turns out it doesn't matter who you are, your neighbor is often who you need to turn to.
Now, Helen, you're on Nextdoor as a business. How have some of the new features that they've launched for businesses helped you?
Well, Nextdoor has been so important to be able to put on Nextdoor. We just launched an app at Equator Coffees in downtown Mill Valley. And so immediately I went to Nextdoor to announce that because, as you know, coffee companies, coffee shops are where the local community goes to talk about local events and global events. So Nextdoor has become that digital Cheers, if you will. And then being able to put that on there immediately, we got so many responses saying, oh my goodness, Equator is going to be open on Friday, and everybody showed up. We had 6 feet of distancing. We wanted to make sure that we had the precautions in place before we did open. So we had little tigers stepped out every 6 feet, and we had an app, so it was totally cashless. So that's been going on now for a week and a half, and we're going to open our Fort Mason store tomorrow. Anything that we can do to try to keep the team that's at the roastery roasting coffee and those baristas that we didn't need to lay off are now behind the bars.
Sarah, as much as there are wonderful and beautiful things happening on Nextdoor, it's also at times been a place where you see things like fear-mongering, complaining, conspiracy theories. And, I'm wondering what you're doing about some of these things, especially at a time when people are really scared.
Yeah, it's incredibly important and we take it really seriously. So as a starting point, remember Nextdoor has community guidelines and we expect that neighbors joining the platform abide by those community guidelines. Second, we have created some technology, a pop-up that happens that if you're posting about, for example, COVID-19, it actually asks you to think about sourcing it. Make sure this is coming from a source that you trust. If you're starting to talk about things like social distancing, make sure that you're just talking with compassion. Remember, everyone's going through a lot right now. Beyond that, we of course want to make sure that we're norming people to show the right behaviors and rewarding them when they show those right behaviors. And that's where I think some of just the pieces that we've added to the platform, like the ability to like something, the ability to love something, the ability to react positively, really starts to come into its own. And then finally, on the accuracy of information point, as I talked about earlier, we do work really closely with public agencies. And I think because Nextdoor was founded on trust, because we verify members, people really do trust the information they see there. And so we've done a lot to elevate that up in the newsfeed. So you actually get a daily roll up of what our public agencies telling you in real time, which is making it a need for people to go to daily to check.
Now, and you're right that the verification process is quite intense, having gone through it myself. I'm like, why can't I get in? I checked my own Nextdoor last night just to see what the tone was, and one of my own neighbors had a post about suggesting that you tell gardeners to stay home but pay them anyway. And then she wrote, I would appreciate any responses in a thoughtful tone. I'm pretty distressed by the level of vitriol on Nextdoor these days. The biggest social networks like Facebook and Twitter historically were really hands-off about the content on their platforms in the name of free speech. They've tried to clamp down more recently, but it really infected the early culture of those platforms. What is your sort of philosophy here in terms of sort of letting people be themselves, which sometimes might not be so polite, and creating a community that's healthy?
Yeah, no, I mean, we feel strongly that when you join Nextdoor, you are joining a neighborhood community, and our purpose is to cultivate kindness. And so we're actually quite explicit about that there are a set of guidelines. So we're not a free speech platform. We are very much a platform that is about moderation. So neighbors you can clearly moderate content. You can say this content is not appropriate. Beyond that, as we've talked about, we will often put up interstitials. We have one called Kindness Reminder. And again, that was working with a lot of academics to slow people down. Because when people show vitriol, it's usually because they're in the moment, right? A lot of platforms drive you to faster engagement, right? Because they just want you to post, post, post. We actually want to slow you down, which is why we do that pop-up. We want you to have a think about why that thing you're about to say could even get reviewed in a future state. So we're kind of tugging on something behavioral psychologists know, which is that people behave better when they think something will get reviewed. And we've seen a huge impact from Kindness Reminder in the same way we're seeing a fairly huge impact from the safety reminder around COVID-19. So we don't sit back at all. We very much lean into this because we want it to be a community that's founded on kindness.
Nextdoor CEO Sarah Fryer there, as well as Helen Russell, the CEO of Equator Coffees. Now, digging in a little bit more around Tesla, their production cuts, production suspension, employee layoffs, a factor of widespread scrutiny. Earlier today on Bloomberg Television, we spoke with hedge fund manager Jim Chanos for his thoughts on Tesla. Take a listen.
It is a story stock that's being held up by people who want to believe that it's on the cutting edge of whether it's autonomy or EV vehicles growth or whatever it might be. But again, I keep coming back to this tired old bromide that this is a car company. It looks exactly like a car company. It's been trading more recently in line with the car companies in terms of its moves up and down. It has to lay people off like a car company, not like a Silicon Valley software company. It has manufacturing plants like a car company. It's got a lot of debt like a car company. I mean, so investors can convince themselves all they want that this is a software company or this is some leading edge technology company. Sadly, the numbers belie that. The numbers show this is a car company. They will lose money again this year, so that'll be 16 or 17 years in a row. This is not a startup anymore. Right. And so at some point, investors will simply have to say, okay, yeah, other guys have EVs too, and they're all in the space. And EV growth was negative last year, 2019 versus 2018 in the U.S. Units were actually down, which is sort of interesting. but it's a car company. And so far that has not been the correct call, I will admit.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, Jim, but at the same time, Tesla does seem to get special treatment. China, for instance, giving it special dispensation to keep its Shanghai factory open and operating through coronavirus. Does it hurt your thesis if China continues to backstop Tesla?
Oh, that's even better. In case you've forgotten, I'm not really positive on anybody having anything to do with China. So I think China exposure ultimately turns out to be a negative for this company. I think one of the things I think that has been lost in the coronavirus news flow has been a really severe deterioration in U.S.-Chinese relations in the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks. China threw Western journalists out, as you guys know, and we've had the advent of another wave of frauds in U.S.-listed Chinese companies. I'm not so sure that Elon embracing Shanghai and the Chinese Communist Party is going to turn out to be a positive.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I do think one of the big questions that people will have is, even after the world returns to something resembling normal, by which I mean it's safe for people to go back to offices and to travel and so forth.
Right.
Everyone is asking, well, what is going to change? There's going to inevitably be something different. What do you see as the most concrete way to say business and U.S.-China relations will change, whether it's on the sort of pure business front or the capital markets front?
Well, the biggest change will be how will businesses look at the supply chain issue. That's the 1,000-pound gorilla, I think, in that will companies that are dependent upon China for essential parts for their businesses move production out of China, or at least second source out of China? What does the political situation look like, whether it's President Trump or President Biden, and how does China fit in that? I think things are hardening rather than softening right now. I mean, some of these headlines out of China would have just a year ago, when we were in the midst of the trade spat, would have been just sort of unbelievable. But because of the virus, we've sort of put them on the back pages.
Jim Chanos there, the hedge fund manager. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, visiting a warehouse in Dallas as the company struggles amidst this coronavirus crisis. We'll talk to our reporter who covers Amazon coming up. This is Bloomberg. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos made a surprise visit to a warehouse in Dallas this week. This as the company is inundated with orders, but workers are protesting safety conditions and conditions at these warehouses in general. I want to bring in our Spencer Soper, who covers Amazon from Seattle. So, Spencer, we didn't know Jeff Bezos was going to be making this visit, but some pictures surfaced. What do we know?
Yeah, so we saw some pictures yesterday on social media where some warehouse workers were just surprised that Bezos was in town. This would be a fulfillment center in the Dallas area. He was wearing jeans and a blue mask and just kind of walking around and rallying the troops, so to speak, because there's just been a lot of news about concerns about the workers in these warehouses and whether the company is doing enough to protect them. And then Amazon did put out a tweet later, I can't remember if it was later yesterday or today, featuring some video footage of Bezos walking around the facility.
So, talk to us about where they are now. They've just instituted some new guidelines telling workers to actually wait 24 hours before touching a package.
So there was a message from a warehouse in eastern Pennsylvania that went out to some workers that really rang an alarm, because workers were told that any shipments from this one particular facility in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which is kind of on the northeastern edge of Pennsylvania, to let those packages sit for 24 hours. That facility is one that kind of takes in shipments from all over the place, even overseas, breaks them down, and then sends them up sends them out to other Amazon fulfillment centers. And so some people on the receiving end of those shipments within Amazon's network were told, hey, if this package comes from this facility, leave it rest for 24 hours. That really spooked a lot of workers because they thought, oh, this means that this virus can be transmitted from packages. Amazon is saying that that was a good intention message sent erroneously, that, someone just kind of bungled whatever they were told to do, but it definitely sent a scare around the workers. And that particular facility in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, has more than 20 cases we've been able to confirm. So it's a very high level of cases at that facility. It's also in a community that's been hit pretty hard by this coronavirus outbreak.
Right, and I know reportedly we're talking about 50 or so warehouses across the country where employees have reportedly tested positive. I know it's a fast-moving story that you're continually trying to keep track of. Meantime, Amazon has just announced an effort to make its own coronavirus tests. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so Amazon just put out an announcement within the past hour or so that there is this shortage of tests, and they were basically acknowledging all of these concerns about people working in its facilities. And I think a major concern among the workers is, okay, we've got all of these rising number of cases. Is this a matter of people getting infected elsewhere, or are people passing the virus, to one another within our workplace? And so because there's such a shortage of tests, Amazon's saying, hey, it would make sense for us to test all our workers, but there simply aren't enough tests for us to do that. So they launched this effort to try to make their own tests. They're fully acknowledging they don't know how far they'll get with this, or even if they'll be able to produce an actual functioning test before this situation, ultimately blows over. But they're putting some effort into producing their own tests nonetheless.
All right. Well, Spencer, I know that's something you'll continue to follow. Keep us posted as the story evolves. Spencer Soper for us in Seattle. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Apple. Apple CEO Tim Cook holding a Q&A session about the coronavirus. Our Mark Gurman, who covers Apple, will be with us next. This is Bloomberg. Apple employees worldwide will soon have a chance to voice their concerns directly to CEO Tim Cook about the impact of COVID-19 on their work. The company plans to hold a Q&A session with Cook later this month. Joining us to discuss, our own Mark Gurman, who covers Apple for us. Mark, what do we know about this AMA, if you will?
Yeah, hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a very rare virtual town hall for Apple. This will be the executives and all the Apple employees, obviously, in their homes. Employees have been encouraged to send in questions to the Apple executives to be addressed during this town hall. A town hall is basically a company-wide all-hands meeting. Apple typically has one or two of these per year, usually in January. So this April one is very much geared to the current COVID-19 situation we're all facing.
Now, I know you talk to a lot of Apple employees. What are their concerns? I mean, the company has been pretty upfront about they've closed stores. They closed stores in China. They closed stores around the world. What are the main issues that workers have at this time?
Yeah, the thing I'm hearing, Emily, over and over again, and obviously this is applicable to any business currently dealing with COVID-19, is that working from home, there's really no way to match that productivity level. During this situation, lots of Apple engineers and employees, they have kids at home, right? And so they're dealing with homeschooling situation as well. They're dealing with spouses who work at other companies who are also, doing their work in Silicon Valley. So this is, is a difficult thing. It's no longer a 9-to-5 job. There's the aspect of work hours going far past that normal 5 p.m. clock out time for a lot of employees. There's the constant need to be connected to do their WebEx meetings and, always being around from that perspective. there's also been the challenges of Apple's secrecy, right? This is the first time where Apple's allowing engineers to take home very early versions of hardware products for development. And so keeping things secure is another concern that's top of mind during this pandemic.
Meantime, Apple has been pretty active, having, some of their manufacturers are working on masks, they're working on face shields. Talk to us about all of those efforts and how it impacts all the work Apple's got to be doing to keep the company running and keep making these devices and making sure they hit their numbers this quarter.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and obviously it's a balance. But at this time, it seems like Tim Cook is putting a priority on these face shields, like you mentioned, the masks. The face shield is no joke. It's something that they spent obviously a couple of weeks designing, working with suppliers and manufacturers to make happen. They've sourced well over 20 million masks at this point. I see a different headline every day from a different state that says that they've received 100,000 new masks from Apple and Tim Cook. But at the same time, a lot of the products that they've been planning for 2020 are very much far into development. They're already nearing that production stage. So I really don't think that any of this other work is really going to have an impact on anything that they're planning for 2020. And I think I can add, and I don't want to speak for Tim Cook, but I think there's a part of this that it doesn't really matter if there's a little impact on Apple's products, because I think Tim Cook really does believe in doing the right thing in this situation.
So then last quick question, Mark. Obviously, Apple earnings are coming up along with many other companies. Any early indications of what we're expecting, how this has impacted iPhone demand and production?
Yeah, I don't think that the March numbers are going to be pretty in any way. We're likely to see a very sizable annual decline. We've seen, over the course of this quarter, all the China stores being shut for a period of it, and now after those all closed, I think the same day within the same 2-day period that all the China stores reopened, Apple's 458 stores outside of China closed. The stores, there's estimates that they bring in collectively between $750 million and $1.1 billion per week. So they've been closed for a month now. In the U.S. side, that's a lot of money. So the numbers aren't going to be pretty. It'll be interesting to see if the iPad launch toward the end of the quarter, the new MacBook Air, Mac Mini, as well as maybe people downloading more apps and using more services, could bolster that in any way.
All right, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, thank you so much. I know you'll be across Apple earnings for us when they report, and we'll be across all these companies as they continue to report earnings over the next several weeks. Thanks so much for sticking with us. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang.